She was just a maid working quietly in a billionaire's mansion until one day she was arrested without any proof. Everyone believed she was guilty. Everyone except the billionaire's autistic son, who couldn't speak much, but what he showed through his silence and his drawings exposed a secret that changed everything and revealed the real criminal. Before we continue with this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video. Oh, and don't forget to comment below where you're watching us from. We love to know that. The Westwood mansion was large, expensive, and always quiet. Maria, the housemaid, moved through the halls with soft steps, making the cold place feel warmer. Oliver, the 7-year-old son of billionaire Victor Westwood, didn't talk to anyone, not even his father, who was always busy with business meetings. But with Maria, Oliver felt safe. Diagnosed with autism at 2 years old, Oliver had trouble connecting with people. Maria never forced him to speak or rushed him. Instead, she paid attention to what he liked and followed his lead patiently. Every morning, Maria prepared Oliver's favorite toys, arranging his colored blocks by color exactly how he liked. Reds in one line, yellows in another line, and greens in another line, blues in another. Then she would sit beside him on the carpet and hum soft songs. The tunes were simple and never changed suddenly. Maria had learned Oliver didn't like surprises. Sometimes he would hum along quietly, and Maria would smile without interrupting. She watched how he played, how he repeated small movements with focus. She understood these actions made him feel calm, so she helped keep that peaceful space around him. Victor Westwood was not just wealthy, he was powerful. He owned one of the biggest investment networks in the country and sat on important business boards. But behind his success, something felt off. His eyes were cold, his smile never genuine. At home, he was distant and demanding. He rarely spoke to Oliver and never thanked his staff. He expected perfection without asking twice. Everyone stayed careful around him. One thing caught Maria's attention: a black briefcase Victor kept locked in a cabinet in his office. She saw it every time she cleaned, but never touched it. The only key hung from Victor's belt. One morning, Maria heard Victor yelling on the phone near his office. His voice was stressed, panicked. Words like deal, no time, fix it, and risk echoed through the hall. Later that day, when she returned to clean, the briefcase was gone. The cabinet stood open and empty. Over the next few days, the mansion's atmosphere changed. People walked more quietly. Staff stopped talking to Maria. When she entered rooms, conversations ended. Even Victor, who usually ignored her, now avoided her completely. Oliver also began pulling away. He stopped playing with his blocks, refused to go to the garden, and wouldn't eat his favorite foods. Maria tried comforting him, but he turned away, rocking back and forth. He sensed the tension too. One morning while cleaning the playroom, Maria opened a cabinet where Oliver kept old puzzles. Behind a stack of toy boxes sat the black briefcase, the same one missing from Victor's office. It was open, empty, no papers, no folders, nothing. No, Maria didn't touch it. She memorized its position and continued cleaning, her heart racing. Later that afternoon, Victor returned home. When their eyes met in the hallway, he stopped and stared at her with a cold, blank expression. He said nothing, but his face told her everything. Something was coming. That evening, 2 police officers arrived quietly. They spoke privately with Victor, then called Maria from the kitchen. Before she understood what was happening, one officer said firmly, "Don't resist." Confused and frightened, she was led toward the living room. Suddenly, Oliver appeared. When he saw the officers holding Maria's arms, his eyes went wide. He screamed, loud, sharp, full of panic. It was the loudest sound Maria had ever heard from him. His small hands shook as he took a few steps forward, then froze. Maria looked at him, her eyes full of fear and sadness, but the officers pulled her away. Oliver screamed again, the sound echoing through the silent mansion. Victor told police that confidential documents had disappeared from his office and Maria had been seen near the briefcase. That was enough. No one asked more questions. Maria was arrested without real proof. The house returned to silence, but it was colder now. While adults avoided discussing it, Oliver was falling apart. He screamed, cried, hit walls, and ripped his drawings. The boy who once followed calm routines became chaotic. Nothing calmed him down. Victor hired a new caregiver, but she didn't understand Oliver. She spoke too loud and touched his things without asking. Oliver stayed mostly silent, but sometimes he whispered the same sentence over and over. She didn't take anything. She cleans. Every morning and sometimes at night he repeated it softly while sitting under tables or curled in corners, rocking back and forth. The caregiver dismissed it as a habit. Victor ignored it completely, but to Oliver, those words were everything. He was trying to say Maria was innocent. After a week, Victor called in a professional. Sophie, a calm young therapist experienced with autism, arrived one afternoon. She immediately noticed Oliver's tension. He was curled on the floor holding torn paper. After several minutes, she heard him whisper, "She didn't take anything. She cleans." The caregiver rolled her eyes, but Sophie didn't dismiss it. To her, it didn't sound random. It was connected to emotion. She wrote the words in her notebook and circled them. It wasn't repetition. It was a message. Sophie returned daily with drawing materials, never forcing conversation. After an hour one day, Oliver picked up a blue crayon and made a line on paper. 20 minutes later, he said it again, louder. "She didn't take anything. She cleans." Sophie asked gently, "Who are you talking about?" He didn't reply but tapped the crayon twice. Sophie knew this was different. Over sessions, she built trust slowly. Each time Oliver repeated the phrase while drawing or staring out the window, Sophie asked gentle questions. Sometimes his eyes filled with tears as he clutched his drawings. Sophie believed him. He was holding on to something real. Sophie noticed Oliver kept drawing the same things: a bookshelf, a tall figure in a dark suit, a black briefcase drawn with straight lines, and a small person wearing bright yellow gloves. The person with gloves never touched the briefcase, but stayed far from it. Another element appeared repeatedly, a faceless hand reaching for the case. When Sophie asked who wore the gloves, Oliver pointed at himself. When she pointed to the faceless hand, he shook his head and pressed his lips together. Then Oliver drew something new. The briefcase wasn't in the middle of the room anymore. It was behind a tall cabinet, hidden on purpose. He pointed to it, then looked at Sophie. His eyes were clear. He wanted her to notice. Sophie went to the playroom later and examined the cabinet Oliver had drawn. She opened it slowly. Inside were toys and books, but on the floor were fresh marks. The cabinet had been moved recently. Thin lines in the dust showed something heavy had been dragged. What Oliver drew was real. Someone had hidden the briefcase there. Sophie contacted James, a lawyer and trusted friend. At a quiet cafe, she showed him copies of Oliver's drawings, photos of floor marks, and session notes. She explained Oliver's repeated message and the empty briefcase. James listened carefully. "This might be planned," he said seriously. They began discussing the possibility that Victor had planted false evidence to frame Maria. Meanwhile, Oliver continued giving clues. He repeated words like daddy, hide, and box. One afternoon, he pointed at a hallway camera and said, "Box, Papa, hide." Sophie understood. Oliver had seen Victor do something. Sophie knew security cameras covered most rooms, including Victor's office and the playroom. If Oliver saw something, cameras might have recorded it. But when she tried accessing the system, everything was password protected. Sophie spoke to Elena, a longtime housekeeper. After hesitating, Elena confessed something strange. Footage from Maria's arrest day had been completely erased. "I didn't do it," Elena said, "but I saw Victor using the system that night. By morning, all files were gone." Sophie's heart pounded. Victor had erased evidence, but Elena mentioned one small hallway camera under maintenance that stored video separately. It had been forgotten. Elena retrieved the device from a maintenance closet. When they played it, the shaky footage showed a portion of hallway floor and people's feet. Then something crucial appeared. A black briefcase, a man walking quickly, part of a suit jacket, then clearly Victor's shoes and hand holding the case, all before Maria was accused. Sophie sent the footage to James immediately. They finally had solid proof Victor lied. James reviewed it multiple times. The date and time matched perfectly. Victor had the briefcase before the supposed discovery that led to Maria's arrest. The entire situation was staged. "We can use this," James said carefully. The video was enough to request a case review. During another session, Oliver drew the mansion garden, fountain and ground, but added several red X's near the fountain area. He pointed outside, tapped the paper twice and looked at Sophie. He wasn't being random. He'd seen something buried there. Sophie showed James the drawing that afternoon. They agreed. It was a map. James filed for a search warrant using the drawing as evidence. Since fraud and evidence tampering were suspected, the court approved it. The next morning, officers arrived with official papers. Victor wasn't home. Following Oliver's map, officers went straight to the garden fountain. Under a large decorative stone, they found a sealed folder wrapped in plastic. Inside were legal documents, financial records, and confidential files. Exactly what Victor claimed were stolen, but they hadn't been stolen. Victor had hidden them. The officers laid everything out. James recognized documents used to accuse Maria. They matched Victor's proof of her supposed crime. The documents had never been taken. They were buried the whole time. James prepared a formal complaint against Victor, gathering all evidence, erased footage, hidden documents, hallway camera recordings, and Oliver's drawings. He also contacted an investigative journalist who ran the story that night. Billionaire accused of framing Maid to hide financial crimes. The story spread fast. People asked questions. Social media exploded. Victor's image began cracking. Public opinion shifted dramatically. The evidence was undeniable. Support grew for Maria. Thousands of online comments demanded her release. James pushed for a full investigation, and the court agreed to reopen the case. Maria, still imprisoned, was notified of new evidence. For the first time since her arrest, there was hope. National news outlets picked up the story. Television stations, newspapers and websites reported it. Pressure on the justice system intensified. The court announced a formal re-evaluation. A new investigative team was assigned. Victor tried staying calm in public, giving short interviews claiming misunderstanding. But the media wasn't convinced. Business partners backed away. For the first time, Victor Westwood wasn't in control. With all new evidence presented, the court approved Maria's release. A formal apology was given, not from Victor, who stayed silent, but from the judge who'd originally approved the arrest. He admitted the decision was rushed and important information ignored. Maria stood quietly, overwhelmed but relieved. She was finally free. Maria stepped out where she'd been held for months. Cameras flashed, reporters called her name, but she stayed calm. Waiting near the exit was Sophie holding Oliver's hand. As soon as Oliver saw Maria, he let go and ran toward her. He didn't speak or smile, just wrapped his arms around her and held tight. Then, for the first time, he began to cry. His small shoulders shook as he buried his face in Maria's shoulder. Maria hugged him back without words. Even reporters stayed quiet. The moment was honest and full of meaning. Days later, while Victor faced legal troubles, Maria was invited on national television. Her story had become famous. The host asked what she planned next. Then, "Do you plan to sue Victor Westwood for everything you went through?" Maria paused, looked at the camera, and said steadily, "What he destroyed cannot be bought with money. But I choose not to carry what belongs to him. I choose to live." Her words were simple but powerful. Social media exploded. People shared her message everywhere. She wasn't weak. She was choosing peace, and that made her stronger. Maria decided to build something new. With court-ordered compensation and donations from supporters, she created the Oliver Center, a place helping children with autism and supporting women who'd suffered injustice. Sophie became co-founder, designing programs adapted to children's ways of thinking and communicating. A key feature was the listening room, a calm space where children could express themselves through drawing, sound, or movement without pressure to talk. Oliver, now older and more verbal, attended group activities, especially drawing sessions. One day he painted himself and Maria standing under a tree holding hands. The image was peaceful and full of meaning. It was later printed on the center's main sign, becoming their official symbol. Victor Westwood was found guilty of fraud, obstruction of justice, and false accusation. He was sentenced to prison and removed from all leadership roles. His assets were frozen. The Westwood name became linked to corruption and abuse of power. Victor never spoke publicly after the verdict. Oliver never mentioned him again. Neither did Maria. The story had moved on. Their lives were built around healing, not revenge. Years later, visitors to the Oliver Center often paused at the large painting near the entrance, showing a boy and woman under a tree holding hands. Some knew the full story, others just saw something beautiful, but everyone felt something honest in it. Sophie often told new staff, "Here we listen deeply because one quiet child changed everything." Maria, working in the background, watched children from the hallway with a quiet smile. They were building something that would last. The truth doesn't always need loud voices. Sometimes it lives in the small hands of a child, in the quiet space of a listening room, and in the choice to believe.